Hey guys, it's Becky with Design Bundles, and today we are going to cover making your own rhinestone designs in Silhouette Studio. Now, don't let this overwhelm you. We are going to start with some simple projects, but I promise that by the end of this tutorial, you are just going to be a rhinestone creating whiz. Now, this tutorial works with regular rhinestones, and we're going to give you a few pointers for those faux rhinestone designs, just in case you haven't learned about that yet. But both projects are really awesome, and this tutorial is just going to set you up for success. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started in Silhouette Studio.
Alrighty, so here we are in Silhouette Studio. This is just your default page. And the first thing I want to talk about is where your rhinestone function is. Now remember that creating your own rhinestone patterns is for designer edition and higher. So if you have the basic edition, that's okay. You can still tune in, but in order to create these yourself, this is something that you would have to upgrade your software for. Now, I have large icons, so I need to use this little menu down here at the bottom. And it's going to be this one. I mean, it does look like a rhinestone once you know what you're looking for. And this is your Rhinestone panel. Now you can also come up here and go to panels, and rhinestones is right there for you. Okay, so you have a few rhinestone options. You have none, edge, fill, and radial fill. And then of course you have rhinestone sizes. Now the 10SS is going to be your most common. You can adjust the spacing in between rhinestones. If you are artistic, you can freehand your own rhinestone designs. And then down here at the bottom, which is one of my favorite features, is it tells me how many rhinestones of each size that are contained in my design. And that's important because you need to know if you have enough rhinestones on hand or how many you need to order. Okay, so let's get started. One of my favorite fonts to use with rhinestones. Here, let's type out cheer. Okay, cheerleaders seem to always need a lot of bling, so of course we will do it just a little design for them. And cheerleader, surprisingly, is one of the fonts that I like to use. Now what you want to do, preferably, I prefer to size my design ahead of time, and then I'm going to go back to my rhinestone panel, and I can choose whether I want to fill the edge, which is what I do with this font. It's a skinnier font, so filling the edge looks good. You can choose the fill, which what that does, this is a linear fill, so it's going to go by lines and try to fill in your text. And you can choose the radial fill, which for this design doesn't look a whole lot different than the edge, but we'll look at some thicker fonts and you'll get to see more what that entails. So you can do smaller rhinestones, bigger rhinestones, okay? But like I said, that 10SS is going to be the most common. Now, if I wanted to, and I don't do this for normal designs, but if I wanted to, I could increase the spacing. And it'll tell you down here, this design in particular, now it's 8.9, so that's probably like a medium-sized adult shirt or smaller. And you can do this design with 356 rhinestones. And I know that seems like a lot, but it actually isn't. Rhinestones are sold as a gross, which is going to be 144 stones. So you would need a minimum of 2 gross and then some extra if you wanted to do this design. And it's not even really that filled in. Okay, so but this is what it looks like. Let me fill this in with color. Now, I did mention that we were going to talk about faux rhinestone designs. Now, faux rhinestone designs just means that you're going to cut this design out of heat transfer vinyl. Holographic heat transfer vinyl works really, really well for this, and then you don't have to mess with the rhinestones. But we're not going to get too much into that. I just wanted to let you know that's an easier way, and this is also the same effect that you would do to create your own faux rhinestone pattern. Okay, so with that taken care of, let's do the same word, but we're going to choose a thicker font. Let's choose cedar. So as you can see with the thicker font, it does fill in and you kind of get a different look. Okay, so I'm going to make this comparable in size, and that's what we're looking at. So not my favorite. Let's scroll through and see what other fonts we have. So this one here, Fatty Cake Smooth, that looks really good. But what I want you to notice is you can adjust the size, and Silhouette Studio will adjust the placement of the rhinestones. So what that means is, see how small that looks really open on the inside? There's a lot of blank areas, but the larger you make it, the more it's going to fill in. Okay, so there's looking a little bit more complete. Now, very rarely are you going to need sheer in 13.7 inches, but just be aware that when you're sizing these, you can adjust the size even just minutely to alter the course of your rhinestones. So let's take a look at what the linear fill would do for this one. So that's not too bad. That's kind of what we're looking at. Now you can choose fonts that are more up and down, more of a rigid look. There we go. This one is called Uncle Grump. Now for this one in particular, because I don't have a lot of definition between my H and my E, I would go ahead and up the character spacing. There we go. So then that would be better. But this one obviously looks very complete and filled in using the linear fill. Let's go back to our rhinestone panel. Let's see, what does the radial fill look like? So not as complete. And here's the edge. So that's not bad either. But in this case, the linear fill is what I would choose. All right, so that's the basics of using text. Now let's slide these out of the way. And I'm going to show you using basic designs, which is probably where I would start. But most people want to do rhinestones so that they can do their own text. So that's why we always start there. I'm going to merge, and I want, let's see, let's go to my downloads. I'm just going to use this heart. This is just a basic heart SVG. Okay, so I can work with the edge. I can do a linear fill and a radial fill. You see the difference between those two? So in this case, again, I would choose probably the linear fill, and I can make it larger or smaller. Now, watch what happens to my numbers down here too, because I have this selected. As I decrease, the number of my rhinestones decrease. So that's where you say, okay, I only have 2 gross. You can make this design small enough so that you would still be able to practice with rhinestones and know that you have enough stones to complete the design. Rhinestones can be misleading when you buy them because, you know, even though it seems like you're buying a lot of designs take a lot of rhinestones. Let's go ahead and do one more. This one is clip art that I have. So again, we'll go to merge. I'm going to go to butterfly. Let's enlarge that because I do have to trace this first. Remember, anytime you're working with clip art, all right, you have to trace it if it's not in an SVG or a DXF format. Okay, so this one is a little bit more complicated. We are going to look at this more than one way. All right, this one I'm going to go back to my rhinestone panel. Now remember that the rhinestones fill in where the lines are. Okay, so that doesn't really look bad, but it doesn't look great either. That was the outline, that's the linear fill, and that's the radial fill. So in this specific circumstance, I think the radial fill looks the best. So that's the one that I would go with. But let's also talk about how we would fill this. We are going to release the compound path. And I'm going to take out this main outline. Okay, so then make a compound path, and we can go to fill. And now, although we lose a lot of the extras that come with the details, we can use the fill and fill in the complete butterfly. So that part is up to you. Let's fill it in just to see what we're working with here. Okay, so still not really great. I would probably, in this specific circumstance, stick with just doing the outline with the radial fill like we did. But just know that you can play around with this and determine what type of look you're going for with your rhinestones. I'm going to go back a couple steps, and we'll go back to our radial fill, and let's fill that in and see what we got. Not super great. I mean, I'm not overly impressed with it, but but I'm also not a rhinestone, fan. I don't mean like I don't like rhinestones, but you know, they're not my favorite media to work with. Now I'll say I really love faux rhinestones, so that's where I really get into playing around with the designs. But typically it seems like the larger you make your design, okay, and the more rhinestones you use, the more complete your design is going to look. So in this case, that is probably around the best that we're going to get. You know, if I'm doing an adult large t-shirt, which is what I wear, then I always size it to 11 inches, and that is the design that I would be working with. Now, you can, let's go back to the rhinestone panel. You can release these rhinestones, and what that's going to do is that's going to separate these into individual circles. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, and it's going to take a minute to release these, but what you can do, some of these areas that feel incomplete or feel a little just not what you had in mind, you can now move those individually. Okay, so like we can zoom in. There we go. And I would be able to just, you know, if I want to move that back here. Now, you do have to be careful if you are doing this with actual rhinestone designs, because you don't want them to overlap and cut into each other. With an actual rhinestone design, you are keeping these as circles so that you can cut your template and fill the circles with your rhinestones. But for the most part, this is what we're looking at. Now, like for this right here, I can actually delete these, and let me show you why. It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this antenna over here looks even better. Okay, so I'm going to create a duplicate of that. I used a shortcut on my keyboard. It is Control and the up arrow. That gave me that duplicate. Now if I flip horizontally, I get one for the other side. And it just looks better. But that is the advantage of releasing the rhinestones, that you can come in here and manipulate those individually. So again, completely up to you, but that's what we're looking at with creating your own rhinestone design. So I'm going to show you a few mock-ups of what you can do with rhinestones. And you know, once you kind of tackle the fear of using rhinestones, then they're definitely a lot easier. And now that you know how to create your own designs, it's also a lot easier to get in here and work with those faux rhinestones as well. So hopefully you guys feel more comfortable using this feature and jump right in. So I'm excited to see what you make.
So, didn't I say it was easy? I mean, Silhouette Studio Designer Edition, don't forget, you do have to have that upgrade, but the Designer Edition just makes it so super easy. And you know, it takes all the hard work out of it for you, meaning that gives you extra time to be able to play and create these really awesome designs. So, all right guys, well, hopefully you learned a little bit today. Not just kidding. Hopefully you learned a lot today. Make sure you leave any questions or comments below, because we always come back in and check with you guys. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel, because we have a lot more tutorials and videos for you right around the corner. So thanks for watching guys, and we will catch you next time.